The stars stretched endlessly across the void, their light cold and distant in the darkness of space. Commander Vex Ithara stood on the bridge of the stellar dawn, watching the swirling colors of distant nebulae paint the viewport in soft blues and purples. The Zephyrian Collective had been exploring this region of space for 3 cycles now, mapping new systems and cataloging resources for future expansion. Vex Ithara's scaled hands moved gracefully across the control panel, her long fingers dancing over holographic displays that showed star charts and sensor readings. The Zephyrians were an ancient race, their civilization spanning thousands of years. They had achieved faster-than-light travel when most species were still learning to make fire. They were explorers, diplomats, and scholars. War was something they had left behind long ago. "Commander," called Science Officer Keftal from his station, "we are detecting an unusual energy signature in Sector 779. Vex Ithara turned toward him, her large black eyes reflecting the bridge lights. "What kind of energy signature?" Keftal manipulated his controls, bringing up a 3-dimensional display in the center of the bridge. Red lines pulsed across the hologram, showing the path of the mysterious energy. "It is unlike anything in our databases. The power output suggests a large vessel, but the energy pattern is strange." "Strange how?" Vex Ithara moved closer to examine the display. "The energy is not coming from fusion reactors or antimatter engines like our ships use. It is something different, something we have never seen before." Around the bridge, other crew members looked up from their stations. The Zephyrians were curious by nature, and the discovery of something truly unknown was exciting. In all their centuries of space travel, they had encountered dozens of alien species. Most were less advanced than the Zephyrians. Some were roughly equal in technology. None had ever surprised them. "Could it be a natural phenomenon?" asked Navigator Yethvar, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of Zephyrian speech. Keftal shook his head, his gill slits fluttering slightly. "Negative. The energy pattern is too regular, too controlled. This is definitely artificial." Vex Ithara studied the readings carefully. As a commander in the collective fleet, she had seen many things. Ancient ruins of dead civilizations, strange creatures on distant worlds, and even a few hostile species that had attacked Zephyrian scouts. But this felt different somehow. The energy signature was not just unknown, it was wrong, as if it did not belong in their understanding of how the universe worked. "How far away is the source?" she asked. "Approximately 4 light hours from our current position," Keftal replied. Vex Ithara made her decision quickly. "Set course for the energy source. Reduce speed to half impulse as we approach. I want full sensor sweeps every few minutes." The stellar dawn changed direction smoothly, its advanced engines barely making a sound. The ship was beautiful, like most Zephyrian vessels. Its hull curved gracefully, covered in a smooth metal that reflected starlight like water. Elegant fins extended from the sides, and the entire design spoke of a people who valued beauty as much as function. As they traveled toward the mysterious energy source, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. The Zephyrians were a peaceful people, but they were not foolish. Their ships carried defensive systems, though they had rarely needed to use them. Most conflicts in the galaxy were resolved through diplomacy and trade agreements. "Commander," Keftal called after an hour of travel, "I am getting more detailed readings now. The energy source is definitely a ship, but—" He paused, looking confused. "But what? The size readings make no sense. According to our sensors, this vessel is enormous, much larger than any ship we have ever encountered." Vex Ithara frowned. The largest ships in the galaxy belonged to the Zephyrian Collective, massive vessels designed to carry entire colonies to new worlds. But even those ships were built for transport, not warfare. "How large exactly?" Keftal worked at his controls for several minutes before answering. "If these readings are correct, the vessel is at least 8 kilometers in length and 3 kilometers wide." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. Such a ship would be massive beyond anything they had imagined. It would require enormous amounts of energy just to move, let alone to power weapons or life support systems. That cannot be right, said Navigator Yethvar. No species could build something that large. The materials alone would be impossible to gather. But as they drew closer, their sensors confirmed the readings. The unknown vessel was indeed massive, drifting silently through space, like a metal mountain. As the stellar dawn approached, more details became visible on their screens. The ship was dark, almost black, its hull appearing to absorb light rather than reflect it. Where Zephyrian vessels were smooth and curved, this ship was angular and brutal. Its surface was covered in what looked like armor plating, scarred and marked by impacts. Strange protrusions jutted from various points along the hull, their purpose unclear. "It looks like it has been in battles," whispered Communications Officer Zal Lin. Vex Thara had to agree. The vessel appeared to be built for war in a way that made her uncomfortable. The Zephyrians had encountered militaristic species before, but this was different. This ship did not just carry weapons. It looked like it was a weapon. "Are you detecting any life signs?" she asked. Keftal worked at his sensors for several minutes. "The hull is very thick and appears to be made of materials that block our scans. But I am detecting some energy patterns that might indicate life. Support systems are active." "So there might be someone alive on that ship?" "Possibly. Or it could be automated systems." Vexithara studied the image of the dark vessel on their main screen. Something about it made her feel uneasy, though she could not explain why. Perhaps it was the way it seemed to swallow light, or the obvious signs of battle damage on its hull. Or perhaps it was simply because it was so different from anything she had ever seen. "Open all communication channels," she ordered. "Broadcast standard first contact protocols on all frequencies." Zal Lin worked at her station, sending out the mathematical sequences and peace symbols that the galaxy used for first contact situations. They waited for several minutes, but there was no response. "Try again," Vexithara said. "Include our identification codes and a request for peaceful dialogue." Again they broadcast their messages. Again there was no response from the dark ship. "Commander," said Keftal, "I am detecting some changes in the vessel's energy patterns. Something is happening over there." On the main screen, the unknown ship remained as dark and silent as before, but their sensors showed energy moving through its hull like blood through veins. Systems that had been dormant were coming online. "They know we are here," Vexthera said quietly. The bridge fell silent except for the soft humming of their ship's systems. In all their centuries of exploration, the Zephyrians had always been the most advanced species in any first contact situation. They had always been the ones with superior technology and knowledge. But looking at this massive, scarred vessel, drifting through space like a sleeping giant, Vexthera wondered if this time might be different. The dark ship continued to power up its systems, and the Zephyrians watched and waited, not knowing that they were about to encounter something that would change their understanding of the universe forever. Commander Vexithara watched the dark vessel with growing concern as more systems came online throughout its massive hull. The energy readings were unlike anything in Zephyrian databases, pulsing through the ship in patterns that seemed almost organic. It reminded her of watching a sleeping creature slowly wake up. "Continue broadcasting peace signals," she ordered. "Include mathematical sequences and star charts showing our home system. Make it clear we come in friendship." Communications. Officer Zal Lin worked diligently at her station, sending message after message toward the silent ship. The standard protocols called for patience in first contact situations. Some species took time to decode alien transmissions, and others were naturally cautious when meeting strangers. But this felt different. The ship's energy patterns suggested advanced technology, far more sophisticated than anything a primitive civilization could create. If these beings were advanced enough to build such a massive vessel, they should have been able to understand basic mathematical concepts and peaceful intentions. "Still no response, Commander," Zal Lin reported after another hour of attempts. "I have tried every frequency and communication method in our databases." Science Officer Keftal looked up from his sensors. Commander, I am detecting something. Interesting. The vessel's hull appears to be covered in some kind of reactive armor. The material actually changes its molecular structure when exposed to different energy types. What does that mean? Asked Navigator Yethvar. It means this. Ship is designed to adapt to different weapons. If you fire a laser at it, the armor becomes resistant to lasers. If you use particle beams, it adapts to those as well. Keftal's voice carried a note of amazement. The technology is incredible. We have nothing like this. Vexithara felt a chill run through her scaled skin. The Zephyrians had encountered defensive technologies before, but nothing that could adapt in real time to different threats. Such technology suggested a species that had fought many different enemies and learned to defend against all of them. What kind of species would need such defenses? She wondered aloud. A species that has been at war for a very long time, replied Tactical Officer Rendal grimly. He was one of the few Zephyrians who still studied military history, and his knowledge of ancient conflicts sometimes proved useful in understanding aggressive species. The hours passed slowly as the Zephyrian crew continued their attempts at communication. They broadcast everything they could think of: mathematical concepts, scientific principles, cultural exchanges, even music from their homeworld. The dark ship received all of their transmissions but gave no response. Commander, Keftal called. I am detecting movement within the vessel. Whatever is aboard that ship, they are definitely active. Life signs? Still difficult to determine. The hull is blocking most of our deep scans, but energy patterns suggest thousands of individual sources moving throughout the ship. Thousands. Vexithara tried to imagine a vessel carrying thousands of beings. The Stellar Dawn had a crew of only 200, and it was considered a large ship by Zephyrian standards. What kind of civilization could field a single vessel with thousands of crew members? Try a different approach, she ordered. Send a simple binary message. Just ones and zeros in a mathematical pattern. Even the most primitive species should be able to understand that. Zal Lin nodded and began transmitting the new message. The binary code pulsed out from their ship in regular patterns, repeating mathematical concepts that any technological species would recognize. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, every sensor on the Zephyrian bridge lit up at once. Commander, Keftal shouted. The vessel is scanning us. The scanning beam was unlike anything Vexithara had ever experienced. It did not just examine their ship's hull or energy patterns. It penetrated deep into their vessel, analyzing their technology, their weapons systems, even their biological signatures. The scan was so detailed and thorough that it felt invasive, almost aggressive. They are examining our computer systems, reported Zal Lin, alarm clear in her voice. The scan is trying to access our databases. Raise shields and cut all external data connections, Vexithara ordered quickly. But even as their defenses activated, she could tell that the scanning beam was far more advanced than their shields. It was like trying to stop a flood with a paper barrier. The scan continued for several more minutes, examining every aspect of their ship and crew before finally ending. Then came the silence. The dark vessel's energy patterns shifted again, and Vexithara could see new systems coming online throughout its hull. Weapon ports that had appeared to be simple hull markings began to open, revealing the dark mouths of unknown weapons. Defensive arrays extended from hidden compartments. The ship was preparing for something. Commander, Keftal said quietly, I think they know everything about us now. The implications were terrifying. The scanning beam had been so advanced that it had cut through their best defenses like they were made of paper. If these beings could examine Zephyrian technology so easily, what else could they do? Continue transmitting peace signals, Vexithara ordered, though her voice lacked its earlier confidence. But even as Zal Lin continued broadcasting, Vexithara found herself studying the dark vessel with new eyes. She had initially thought of it as a ship, but looking at it now, she realized that was wrong. This was not just a vessel. It was a fortress. Every line of its hull spoke of warfare, every surface was designed for battle. This was a ship built by a species that understood violence in ways the peaceful Zephyrians never could. The weapon ports continued to open, revealing glimpses of massive weapon systems hidden within the hull. Energy readings spiked as targeting systems came online. The dark ship was not just awake now, it was ready for war. "Commander," whispered Navigator Yethvar, "maybe we should withdraw to a safe distance." Vexathara considered the suggestion. It would be the wise thing to do. Their ship was small compared to the massive vessel before them, and they were clearly outmatched in technology. But the Zephyrians were explorers first, and always. They had encountered dangerous situations before, and resolved them through patience and diplomacy. "Not yet," she decided. "We maintain our position and continue trying to communicate. This species may simply be cautious. We must show them that we pose no threat." But even as she spoke the words, Vexathara could not shake the feeling that they were making a terrible mistake. The dark ship continued to power up its weapon systems, and with each passing moment, it became more clear that they were not dealing with a cautious species. They were dealing with predators. The scanning beam had told these beings everything they needed to know about Zephyrian technology and capabilities. The weapon systems coming online could probably destroy the Stellar Dawn with ease, and still there had been no communication, no acknowledgement of their peaceful intentions. "Commander," Keftal called, his voice tight with worry. "Energy readings are off the charts. Whatever they are powering up over there, it is beyond anything we have ever encountered." Vexathara stared at the dark vessel on their main screen. Somewhere inside that massive hull, thousands of alien beings were preparing for something, and, for the first time in her long career, she wondered if the Zephyrians might have finally encountered something they could not handle through diplomacy and peaceful contact. The dark ship hung in space like a storm cloud, silent and menacing, waiting for something, and the Zephyrians could only wait with it, hoping that their peaceful intentions would eventually be understood by a species that seemed to speak only the language of war. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Commander Vexathara stood on the bridge of the Stellar Dawn, watching the dark vessel as more and more of its systems came online. The weapon ports were fully open now, revealing massive gun barrels that could probably destroy a small moon. Energy readings continued to climb beyond anything in their databases. Then, without warning, every speaker on the Zephyrian bridge crackled to life. "You have 30 seconds to withdraw to a distance of 50,000 kilometers. This is your only warning." The voice that came through their communication system was unlike anything Vexathara had ever heard. It was speaking perfect Zephyrian, with no accent or hesitation, as if the speaker had been born on their homeworld. But the tone was completely wrong. There was no emotion in the words, no warmth or curiosity that typically marked first contact situations. It was cold, clinical, and absolutely certain. The bridge crew stared at each other in shock. After hours of trying to establish communication, the alien ship had finally responded. But instead of answering their peaceful overtures, it had given them a threat. "How do they know our language so perfectly?" whispered Communications Officer Zal Lin. Science Officer Keftal looked pale, his gill slits fluttering rapidly. "The scanning beam. They did not just examine our technology, they downloaded our databases, including our language files." The implications hit Vexathara like a physical blow. These beings had not spent time learning Zephyrian through patient study. They had simply stolen the knowledge from their computers. In minutes, the level of technology required for such an act was staggering. 20 seconds, the emotionless voice announced. Vexathara made a quick decision. "We are peaceful explorers," she broadcast back. "We mean no harm. We only wish to establish diplomatic contact and exchange knowledge." There was no response to her words. The countdown continued in her head as she watched the dark vessel. Its weapon systems were fully powered now, energy readings that made their own defensive capabilities seem like toys by comparison. "Commander," urged Navigator Yethvar, "we should withdraw. This species is clearly hostile." But Vexathara hesitated. The Zephyrians had built their civilization on the principle that all conflicts could be resolved through understanding and communication. They had never encountered a species that could not eventually be reasoned with. Perhaps these beings were simply being cautious, testing their intentions. "We will not withdraw," she announced, both to her crew and to the alien vessel. "We are a peaceful exploration ship. We pose no threat to you or your people." The 30 seconds passed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the dark ship began to change. Running lights that had been completely dark suddenly blazed to life along the massive hull. The illumination revealed the true scale of the vessel for the first time, and every Zephyrian on the bridge drew in a sharp breath. The ship was not just large, it was enormous beyond comprehension. Their own vessel, which they had thought was a respectable size, looked like a small shuttle next to this monster. The hull stretched on and on, covered in armor plating that looked thick enough to stop asteroid impacts. Massive weapon turrets rotated slowly, their gun barrels longer than the entire length of the stellar dawn. Sensor arrays and communication dishes emerged from hidden compartments, creating a forest of technology along the ship's spine. But it was the design that truly frightened Vexthera. Every line of the vessel spoke of violence. Every surface was built for war. This was not a ship that had been converted for military use. It had been designed from the beginning as an instrument of destruction. "By the ancient stars," breathed Tactical Officer Rendal. "That is not a ship. That is a mobile weapons platform." The massive vessel began to turn, its engines producing energy readings that defied understanding. The movement was slow and deliberate, like a great predator deciding whether its prey was worth the effort of killing. More systems came online throughout the hull. Point defense turrets emerged from dozens of locations, their targeting lasers already tracking the small Zephyrian ship. Missile tubes opened like hungry mouths, revealing glimpses of the weapons waiting within. "Commander," Keftal called, his voice tight with fear, "I am detecting massive energy buildups throughout their weapon systems. If they fire, our shields will not even slow their weapons down." Vexithara felt a chill run through her body. In all her years of exploration, she had never encountered a situation like this. The Zephyrians were used to being the advanced species in any first contact. They were the ones with superior technology, the ones who offered help and guidance to less developed civilizations. But this ship made their technology look primitive by comparison. The energy readings alone suggested power generation capabilities far beyond anything the Zephyrians had achieved. And the weapons? The weapons were designed to fight wars on a scale that peaceful species like hers could not even imagine. "They gave us a warning," she realized aloud. "They could have destroyed us without saying a word, but they gave us a chance to leave." "A warning we ignored," added Yethvar grimly. The dark ship continued its slow turn, and Vexithara could see more details of its construction. The armor plating was scarred and marked by impacts from weapons she could not identify. This vessel had seen battle, real combat against enemies that could actually damage it. How many wars had this ship fought? How many enemies had it destroyed? "Commander," Zal-Lin called, "I am receiving another transmission." The same emotionless voice filled the bridge again. "Your language patterns indicate you are the Zephyrian Collective. Your databases show no records of warfare in the past 800 years. You are explorers and diplomats, not soldiers." The clinical analysis of their entire civilization in just a few sentences was more frightening than any threat could have been. These beings had not just stolen their language, they had learned everything about Zephyrian society in the few minutes their scanning beam had been active. The voice continued, "You do not understand the situation you have entered. Withdraw now, or we will be forced to treat you as a potential threat." "We are not a threat," Vexthara broadcast desperately. "We are peaceful. We have no weapons that could harm a ship like yours." "That is irrelevant," came the reply. "You ignored a direct order to withdraw. In our experience, species that ignore warnings often ignore other instructions as well." The massive ship completed its turn and was now facing them directly. Every weapon system was trained on their small vessel. Energy readings climbed even higher as targeting systems locked onto the stellar dawn. For the first time in 800 years of peace, a Zephyrian crew faced the real possibility of death by violence. Their shields would not protect them. Their speed would not save them. Their diplomatic skills were useless against beings who communicated through ultimatums and threats. "Commander," whispered Rendal, "request permission to charge weapons and raise combat shields." Vexithara almost laughed at the suggestion. Their weapons were designed for asteroid mining and defending against space pirates with primitive technology. Against this monster they would be like throwing stones at a mountain. But she gave the order anyway. If they were going to die, they would at least die as Zephyrians, with dignity and courage. The Stellar Dawn's defensive systems came online, though everyone on the bridge knew they were useless. Their small weapons powered up, more for symbolic purposes than any real hope of survival. The dark ship registered their defensive preparations immediately. More weapon systems swiveled to track them and energy readings spiked again. "Fascinating," the emotionless voice said. "You are preparing to fight despite being completely outmatched. Your databases indicated your species abandoned warfare centuries ago, yet you still retain the instinct to resist when cornered." There was a pause, as if the beings on the dark ship were discussing something among themselves. "You show courage," the voice continued. "That is unexpected." Vexithara held her breath, waiting for the final attack that would vaporize her, ship and crew. But instead something else happened. The massive vessel's weapon systems began to power down. Commander Vexithara watched in confusion as the massive alien vessel's weapons began to power down. The energy readings dropped from lethal levels to merely threatening ones. The targeting lasers that had been locked onto the Stellar Dawn switched off, though the weapon systems remained ready. "What are they doing?" whispered Navigator Yethvar. Before anyone could answer, the emotionless voice returned. "You will observe. Do not move. Do not transmit. Do not activate any systems beyond life support." The tone brooked no argument. Whatever these beings planned to show them, resistance would likely result in their immediate destruction. Vexithara nodded to her crew, and the Zephyrian ship went silent except for the minimal systems needed to keep them alive. "What are they going to show us?" Communications Officer Zal Lin asked quietly. Science Officer Keftal was studying his sensors intently. "Unknown, but energy patterns throughout their ship are shifting again. They are powering up different systems now." The dark vessel began to move, its massive bulk turning with surprising grace. As it rotated, Vexithara could see more details of its construction. The armor plating was incredibly thick, designed to withstand impacts that would shatter planets. Strange markings covered the hull, some that looked like battle damage and others that might have been decorative or symbolic. "Look at those impact craters," Tactical Officer Rendal said softly. "Some of those marks are enormous. What kind of weapons could cause damage like that?" Before anyone could speculate, their sensors detected movement in the space around them. Small objects, barely visible to their instruments, were drifting through the area, micrometeorites and space debris, the kind of tiny particles that existed everywhere in space. The alien ship's point defense system suddenly came to life. What happened next took place so quickly that Vexithara's eyes could barely follow it. Dozens of small turrets emerged from the dark ship's hull, each no larger than a Zephyrian escape pod. These weapons tracked the micrometeorites with impossible precision, following particles too small for most sensors to detect. Then they fired. Beams of coherent energy lanced out from the point defense systems, each beam striking a different particle of space debris. The tiny meteorites simply vanished, vaporized so completely that not even atoms remained. The targeting was perfect. Every shot hit its mark. Every particle was destroyed. But it was the speed that made Vexithara's blood turn cold. The weapons had tracked and destroyed hundreds of targets in less than a second. The reaction time, the precision, the raw computational power required for such an achievement was beyond anything the Zephyrians had ever imagined. "How is that possible?" Keftal breathed, staring at his sensor readings in disbelief. The display was not over. The alien ship's larger weapon systems began to extend from their housings, revealing gun barrels that dwarfed anything in the Zephyrian arsenal. These were not point defense weapons. These were ship killers designed to destroy vessels much larger than the Stellar Dawn. One of the massive turrets rotated smoothly, its targeting systems scanning the space around them. In the distance, perhaps 1,000,000 kilometers away, floated a small asteroid, no larger than a Zephyrian city. The turret locked onto this distant target and fired. The weapon made no sound in the vacuum of space, but Vexithara could see the energy discharge on her screens. A single projectile, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, crossed the distance to the asteroid in seconds. The asteroid ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no debris field, no gradual collapse. One moment the rocky body was there, a solid mass that had probably existed for billions of years. The next moment, there was nothing but a rapidly expanding cloud of superheated plasma. "By the ancient gods," whispered Yethvar. "They vaporized an entire asteroid with one shot." Keftal was working frantically at his sensor station, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. The energy output of that single weapon was equivalent to our ship's entire power grid, running at maximum capacity for a full year. The implications were staggering. This single alien vessel carried weapons that could destroy fleets, level cities, or crack open moons. And they had just demonstrated this power with casual ease, as if destroying asteroids was something they did for practice. But the demonstration was not finished. The massive ship began to accelerate, its engines producing energy readings that made their previous displays seem small by comparison. The vessel moved with impossible grace for something so large, turning and maneuvering as if it weighed nothing at all. As it moved, more weapon systems revealed themselves. Missile tubes opened along the hull, revealing glimpses of warheads that could probably destroy entire star systems. Energy weapon arrays extended from hidden compartments, each one larger than the Stellar Dawn's main engines. Shield generators hummed to life, creating defensive barriers that would make their own shields seem like tissue paper. "This is not just a warship," Rendell said in amazement. "This is an entire fleet contained within a single hull." The alien vessel continued its demonstration, showing off systems and capabilities that defied every law of physics the Zephyrians thought they understood. Faster than light communications arrays, sensors that could apparently see through solid matter, and manufacturing facilities that seemed to be producing new weapons even as they watched. "Commander," Keftal called, his voice shaking. "I am detecting something impossible. This ship appears to be manufacturing antimatter in real time. The energy containment systems alone would require more power than our entire civilization produces." Vexithara felt dizzy as she tried to comprehend what she was seeing. The Zephyrians had always prided themselves on their advanced technology. They could travel between stars, communicate across vast distances, and build cities that floated in space. But compared to this alien vessel, their greatest achievements looked like primitive tools made by children. The demonstration reached its climax as the massive ship deployed what appeared to be a scanning array, larger than most space stations. The array activated, and suddenly every star system within 100 light-years appeared on their screens in perfect detail. "They just scanned 100 star systems simultaneously," Keftal reported in disbelief. "The computational power required for such an achievement, it is beyond calculation." The scanning array retracted, and the alien ship's systems began to power down to their previous levels. The demonstration was over, but its message was crystal clear. This single vessel possessed technology that could dominate entire sectors of space. Their weapons could destroy worlds, their defenses could withstand any attack, and their sensors could track every ship in a dozen star systems at once. The emotionless voice returned to their communication system. "You have observed a standard defensive demonstration. These capabilities represent approximately 1% of this vessel's total combat potential." 1%. Vexithara felt her legs give way, and she had to grab onto her command chair for support. If what they had just seen represented only 1% of the ship's capabilities, then this single vessel could probably conquer the entire Zephyrian collective without significant effort. "We understand," she managed to say into the communications system. "We understand that you are far more advanced than we are." "No," came the reply. "You do not understand. You cannot understand. Your species has known peace for 8 centuries. You have forgotten what war truly means. You build ships for exploration and trade. We build ships to survive." There was a pause, and when the voice continued, it seemed almost sad. "We did not choose to become what we are. But the universe gave us no other option." Vexithara wanted to ask what they meant, wanted to understand what had forced these beings to develop such terrifying capabilities. But before she could speak, the alien ship's systems began to change again. New energy patterns emerged throughout the massive hull, and Vexithara realized with growing horror that the demonstration was not over. They were about to see what this species considered a real show of force. The massive alien vessel hung motionless in space for several long minutes after its devastating demonstration. Commander Vexithara and her crew waited in tense silence, afraid to move or speak. The casual destruction of an entire asteroid with a single shot had shown them exactly how outmatched they were, but the emotionless voice had promised that this was only 1% of the ship's true capabilities. What could these beings possibly show them that would be worse than what they had already seen? The answer came as new systems began to activate throughout the dark hull, but instead of weapons or sensors, these appeared to be communication arrays of unprecedented size and power. Energy patterns flowed through the ship's structure like rivers of light, converging on massive transmission dishes that emerged from hidden compartments. "What are they doing now?" whispered Navigator Yethvar. Science Officer Keftal studied his readings with growing amazement. They appeared to be preparing for a massive communication burst. The power levels are enormous, enough to send a signal across the entire galaxy. Before Vexithara could respond, a new voice filled their bridge. Unlike the emotionless tone they had heard before, this voice was warm, female, and carried an accent that seemed somehow familiar despite belonging to an alien species. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Retribution. I apologize for my crew's rather direct approach to first contact, but we have learned to be cautious when encountering unknown vessels in deep space." The voice paused, and Vexithara could hear what sounded like background conversations, as if the captain was discussing something with her officers. "Your scanning technology is impressive," Captain Chen continued, "and your databases indicate that you are indeed a peaceful species. The Zephyrian Collective has maintained peace for over 8 centuries, which is unusual in our experience." "Captain Chen," Vexithara managed to say, "we are honored to make contact with your species. We came seeking peaceful dialogue and cultural exchange." A sound that might have been laughter came through the communication system. "Peaceful dialogue. Yes, I can see from your records that your people value such things. That is refreshing." The massive ship began to turn again, and as it moved, more details of its construction became visible. Vexithara could see now that the hull was covered not just with armor and weapons, but with names and symbols. Thousands upon thousands of markings covered every available surface, as if this single vessel carried the history of an entire civilization. "You are wondering about our ship," Captain Chen said, apparently noticing their scans. "The Retribution is what we call a deep space exploration and defense vessel. She has been my home for 12 years now, and before that she served other captains for almost a century." A century. The implications made Vexithara feel dizzy. This single ship had been in service longer than most Zephyrian vessels existed before being replaced with newer models. "Your technology," Keftal said hesitantly, "it is far beyond anything we have achieved. Your weapons, your defenses, your scanning capabilities are necessary for survival," Captain Chen replied, and her voice carried a weight of experience that made the Zephyrian crew fall silent. "You see, the galaxy is not the peaceful place your people believe it to be. There are species out there that view other civilizations as nothing more than resources to be harvested, worlds to be conquered, beings to be enslaved." The communication arrays continued to power up, and Vexithara realized that whatever message Captain Chen was preparing to send, it would reach far beyond their small encounter. "We humans learned long ago that hoping for peace is not enough," the captain continued. "You must be prepared to defend peace, to fight for it when necessary. Your species has been fortunate to develop in a quiet sector of space, away from the ear, predators and conquerors. Are there many such species? Vexithera asked, though she was not sure she wanted to hear the answer. More than you would believe. The Korth hegemony, who view all other life as inferior and fit only for slavery. The Void Seekers, who consume entire star systems to power their war machines. The collective of Echoes, who strip the minds from living beings and use them as organic computers. Each name sent chills through the Zephyrian crew. These were not abstract threats from ancient history. Captain Chen spoke of them as current active dangers. But you do not need to fear them, the human captain said, and there was something in her voice that might have been a smile. Not anymore. The communication arrays reached full power, and suddenly the space around the Retribution lit up with dozens of transmission beams. Each beam shot out in a different direction, carrying signals to distant points throughout the galaxy. What are you broadcasting? Vexithera asked. Star charts, Captain Chen replied calmly. Very detailed star charts showing the current positions of 17 other human vessels currently operating in this galaxy. Vexithera's blood turned to ice. 17 other ships like yours? Oh, they are not all like the Retribution, the captain said, and now there was definitely amusement in her voice. Some are larger. The sensor displays on the Zephyrian bridge suddenly lit up with new contacts. Ships that had been completely invisible to their instruments moments before were now broadcasting their positions. 17 points of light scattered throughout known space, each one representing a vessel of unknown but presumably devastating capability. How long have you been here? Yethvar asked in a whisper. Humanity has been exploring this galaxy for 37 years, Captain Chen replied. We arrived to find it largely at peace, which surprised us. Our own galaxy was quite different, much more violent, much more dangerous. We had to learn to be strong just to survive. The implications hit Vexithera like a physical blow. These humans were not native to their galaxy at all. They were visitors, explorers from another galaxy entirely. And they had been watching, learning, mapping everything for over 3 decades without anyone knowing they were there. Why reveal yourselves now? She asked. Because things are about to change, Captain Chen said, and her voice grew serious again. Our long-range sensors have detected movement in the dark sectors. Species that have been quiet for millennia are beginning to stir. Old empires are rebuilding their fleets. The peace your galaxy has enjoyed may not last much longer. The transmission arrays began to retract as the communication burst ended. Whatever message the humans had sent was now spreading across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds, reaching destinations the Zephyrians could not even imagine. We prefer peace, Captain Chen continued. Despite our capabilities, despite our weapons and defenses, we would rather explore than fight. But we have learned that sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to make war too costly for aggressors to consider. The massive ship began to turn away from the Zephyrian vessel, its engines building power for departure. Wait, Vexithera called out. Will we see you again? Can our people establish formal diplomatic relations? Perhaps, the human captain replied. But first, your collective will need to decide what kind of civilization you want to be. The galaxy is changing, Commander Vexithera. Your people can continue to explore and study and build beautiful things. But you may also need to learn to defend those things. The Retribution's engines reached full power, creating energy readings that dwarfed everything they had seen before. Space itself seemed to bend around the massive vessel as it prepared to enter faster-than-light travel. One final piece of advice, Captain Chen said, her voice already beginning to fade as the ship prepared to jump. The 17 ships you can see on your sensors are not the only human vessels in this galaxy. They are simply the ones we have chosen to reveal. Remember that and share it with any species that might be thinking of causing trouble. The ship engaged its faster-than-light drive, and the Retribution simply vanished from existence, leaving behind only a faint distortion in space-time and the lingering echoes of its massive energy signature. The Zephyrian bridge fell completely silent. For several long minutes no one spoke or moved. They simply stared at the empty space where the most powerful vessel any of them had ever seen had hung moments before. Finally, Communications Officer Zhao Lin broke the silence. "Commander, what do we tell the collective?" Vexithara looked around at her crew, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. They had left their home system as explorers, expecting to catalog new star systems and maybe make contact with a primitive species. Instead, they had encountered beings whose technology made their own civilization look like children playing with toys. But more than that, they had learned that their peaceful galaxy was not as safe as they had believed. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, predator species were stirring. Ancient empires were rebuilding, and the only thing standing between the peaceful civilizations and chaos was a fleet of human ships that preferred to remain hidden. "We tell them the truth," Vexithara said finally. "We tell them that the galaxy has changed, and that we are no longer alone. We tell them about the humans and their ships." She looked at the sensor display, where 17 points of light still showed the positions of the revealed human vessels. As she watched, one by one, the signals faded as the ships returned to whatever stealth technology kept them hidden from Galactic. The stars looked different from this sector of space. Chief Researcher Zixtal pressed a long, thin finger against the viewport of the luminous inquiry and traced the outline of the human warship in the distance. The vessel, known as the USS Intrepid, moved with purpose through the darkness, its hull reflecting the distant sun's light. "Are we certain about this mission?" asked Junior Researcher Nevlox, his voice carrying the musical tones typical of Zilarian speech. Zixtal turned, the scales on his face shifting to a confident blue pattern. "The Galactic Concord requires more information on these humans. They are an anomaly. Aggressive, divided, yet somehow advanced enough to join us among the stars." The 6 Zilarian researchers had spent 3 orbital cycles observing the human ship from a distance. Their vessel, cloaked with the most advanced technology, in the Concord had remained undetected, or so they believed. On board the USS Intrepid, Engineer Alan Reeves frowned at his console. "That's the 3rd energy spike this week," he muttered to himself. The readings were faint, just small disturbances in the background radiation near the ship. He tapped his communication badge. "Reeves to bridge, I'm still getting those strange readings." "Acknowledged," came the tired voice of Night Officer Ben Lopez. "Sensors show nothing out there, probably just cosmic background." Alan shrugged and returned to his maintenance work on the antimatter containment system. The Intrepid was on routine patrol in the Tau Ceti system, maintaining Earth's military presence in what some politicians called disputed space. Most of the 200-person crew was asleep, with only 20 crew members actively working the night shift. Back on the Zilarian vessel, final preparations were underway. The researchers dressed in their environmental suits, necessary not just for breathing but also equipped with stealth technology that bent light around them. Not true invisibility, but enough to avoid casual detection. "Remember," Zixtal instructed, "we collect data and leave. No interaction with the humans. Our intelligence indicates this section of their ship will be empty during their sleep cycle." The team checked their equipment one last time. Sample collectors, data scanners, and universal translators, just in case. Each carried a small defensive tool, but they were scientists, not warriors. If discovered, their plan was simple. "Retreat. Immediately. Initiating matter transfer," announced the ship's operator. The teleportation beam was another technology humans reportedly lacked. The 6 Zilarians dissolved into streams of light. They materialized in the engineering section of the Intrepid. The human ship was smaller than their own but densely packed with equipment. Pipes ran along ceilings, control panels lined walls, and the constant hum of machinery filled the air. "Spread out," whispered Zixtal. "Keep communication channels open." The aliens moved carefully through the engineering bay, their eyes wide as they took in the human technology. It was different from their own, less elegant, more practical, with redundant systems everywhere. Each researcher began collecting data, scanning equipment, taking samples of materials. Fascinating, murmured researcher Veldin, examining a power coupling. Their energy transfer systems are inefficient but extremely durable. Their computer interfaces are designed for speed over accuracy, noted another researcher. Everything about this ship speaks of beings prepared for things to go wrong. Zixtal was about to respond when he froze. From behind a large reactor housing stepped a human male. The alien researchers instantly stilled, relying on their stealth suits to remain undetected. Alan Reeves had just finished checking the containment field regulators when he noticed something strange. 6 shimmering outlines stood in his engineering bay. They weren't completely invisible, more like the way heat makes air waver above hot pavement. He could see right through them, but they were definitely there. The Zalarians remained motionless, confident in their technology. Their intelligence had indicated human vision was limited compared to their own. What they didn't know was that humans had evolved as predators, with eyes particularly sensitive to movement. "I can see you," Alan said simply, reaching slowly toward the alarm panel on the wall. Zixtal felt a shock run through his body. How could the human detect them? Their suits should have rendered them virtually invisible. He quickly assessed the situation. Their cover was blown and the human was about to alert others. "Wait." Zixtal stepped forward, deactivating his camouflage. "We mean no harm." The other researchers followed suit, their forms becoming fully visible. Tall, slender beings with scale-like skin that shifted colors with their emotions. Their large eyes blinked nervously at the human. Alan's hand stopped inches from the alarm. His eyes widened at the sight of the aliens, but years of Starfleet training kept him calm. "You're aboard a United Earth military vessel without authorization. Identify yourselves." "We are scientific researchers from the Zalarian Collective," Zixtal explained, his translator converting his musical language to human English. "We are here to study your species." Alan's eyes narrowed. "By sneaking aboard our ship? That's not how research works where I come from." "Our methods are non-invasive. We meant only to observe," Zixtal tried to explain. Alan's hand moved again toward the alarm panel. "You should have asked permission." Junior researcher Nevlox panicked. His scales flashed a bright warning red as he raised his sample collector. The device, while harmless, looked enough like a weapon to trigger Alan's combat training. Alan slammed his hand on the alarm button. Immediately, red lights began flashing throughout the ship, and a loud siren wailed. "Intruder alert! Security! To engineering deck!" The Zalarians looked at each other in dismay. This was not how their careful research mission was supposed to go. Their intelligence had clearly been flawed. "We should leave," urged Veldin. "Activate emergency transport." Zixtal tried his communication device, but nothing happened. "The human ship is generating interference. We cannot transport." Throughout the Intrepid, the crew awoke to the blaring alarms. Commander Kate Willis jumped from her bed, grabbing her uniform. Security Chief Greg Porter was already organizing his team, weapons drawn as they rushed toward engineering. "What's the situation?" Commander Willis demanded, running onto the bridge. Night Officer Lopez looked up from his console. "Engineer Reeves reports 6 alien intruders in engineering. Unknown species, appeared out of nowhere." Willis's face hardened. "Lock down all sections. No one gets off this ship." Back in engineering, Alan kept his distance from the aliens but blocked the only exit. "Stay where you are," he ordered. "Security is on the way." Zixtal's scales had shifted to a pale blue, the Zalarian equivalent of going white with fear. What had started as a simple scientific expedition had just become a potential interstellar incident. As the sounds of running boots echoed down the corridor outside, the chief researcher realized they had made a terrible mistake. They had boarded a human warship for research, and they were about to regret it immediately. Red emergency lights flooded the corridors of the USS Intrepid as Commander Kate Willis rushed toward engineering. She had pulled on her uniform in seconds, muscle memory from countless drills. Around her, the ship transformed from quiet night, cycled to full combat readiness with practice speed. "Status report," she demanded into her communicator as she ran. 6 alien intruders in engineering, replied Security Chief Greg Porter. who was already leading a team down another corridor. Engineer Reeves has them contained for now. No weapons fired yet. In engineering, Alan kept his eyes fixed on the 6 strange visitors. The aliens stood close together, their scale-like skin shifting through colors that seemed to reflect their mood. Right now, they were mostly showing pale blues and anxious yellows. Your ship's response time is unexpected, said Zixtal, trying to sound calm. Our research indicated humans would be slow to mobilize during sleep cycles. Alan raised an eyebrow. You picked the wrong ship to test that theory. The door to engineering slid open with a hiss. 4 security officers entered, weapons drawn. They moved with practiced precision, spreading out to cover all angles. The aliens' eyes widened at this display of coordination. On the ground, hands. Where we can see them, ordered the lead officer. The Zilarians looked at each other in confusion. Their physiology was different from humans, their joints bent in different ways. We cannot assume that position, Zixtal explained, but we surrender peacefully. The aliens raised their 4-fingered hands slowly. Commander Willis arrived moments later, taking in the scene with quick, analytical eyes. She was shorter than most of her crew but carried an air of authority that made her seem taller. I am Commander Kate Willis of the United Earth Defense Force, she announced. You have illegally boarded a military vessel. Identify yourselves, and your purpose. Zixtal stepped forward slightly. I am Chief Researcher Zixtal of the Zilarian Collective. We are scientists, not warriors. We came to study your species. Willis's eyes narrowed. By sneaking aboard my ship? The Galactic Concord required more data on humanity, Zixtal explained. Your species is unusual. You advance to space travel despite ongoing internal conflicts. You build warships despite being in peacetime. We needed to understand. And direct contact was too straightforward? Willis asked. Junior researcher Nevlox, his scales now a nervous purple, spoke up. Observation without interaction gives more natural results. Security Chief Porter snorted. How's that working out for you? As they spoke, more crew members arrived. The ship's doctor, Susan Clark, observed the aliens with professional curiosity. The Zilarians noticed the humans carried themselves differently from most species they had studied. Even the medical officer moved with a hint of combat readiness. Search them for weapons, Willis ordered. We carry only research tools, Zixtal said, but submitted to the search. The security team carefully collected the aliens' equipment. One officer whistled at the technology. Some of this stuff is way beyond our tech level, Commander, he noted. Willis turned to her security chief. Take them to the secure conference room. Post guards. I want their tech analyzed and a full ship. Sweep for any other surprises. As the aliens were led away, Zixtal noticed that despite the alarm, the human crew operated with remarkable efficiency. There was no panic, no wasted motion. Everyone seemed to know exactly what to do in this unexpected situation. In the conference room, the 6 researchers sat nervously under guard. Through the window they could see stars streaking by. The ship had changed course. Why are we moving? Asked Veldin. Standard procedure, replied one of the guards. We never stay in one place after a security breach. The door opened, and Commander Willis entered, followed by Dr. Clark and Security Chief Porter. Willis placed a small device on the table. My communications officer managed to fix your translator to work with our system, she said. So let's talk clearly. You're from the Galactic Concord, the same organization that denied our request for full membership last year? The aliens exchanged looks. Your species was granted observer status, Zixtal said carefully. Full membership requires more time to evaluate compatibility. Willis leaned forward. Yet you felt comfortable enough to invade our ship. Not invade, Nevlox protested. Research only. Dr. Clark stepped closer, examining the aliens with interest. Your physiological response indicates stress. The color changes in your scales. That's emotional signaling, isn't it? Zixtal seemed surprised by this observation. Yes. How did you know? Similar patterns exist in Earth species, she replied. Your current colors suggest fear and anxiety. On. The bridge, Night Officer Lopez was reviewing sensor logs. "Commander, I found something. There's a cloaked vessel about 500,000 kilometers off our port side. It's been shadowing us for days." Willis's face hardened. "Their mothership. Target weapons, but hold fire." Zixtal's scales flashed alarm red when told about this development. "Please. Our vessel is a scientific ship. It has minimal defenses." "Unlike the ship you chose to board," Willis noted coldly. In engineering, Alan Reeves was examining the aliens' equipment with fascination. "This is amazing," he told his assistant. "Their power sources are incredibly efficient." His assistant nodded. "But have you noticed? All their tools are designed for perfect conditions. No redundancies, no backup systems." Alan realized she was right. They've never had to make things work when everything is going wrong. Back in the conference room, Willis was questioning the aliens about the Galactic Concord. Why was humanity only given observer status? "Your species is considered unpredictable," Veldin explained. "You continue to maintain military forces despite no external threats. Your nations still have borders. You prepare for conflicts that don't exist." Willis laughed, a sound that made the alien's scales shift uneasily. "And now you're seeing why." The ship suddenly shook slightly. Porter touched his communicator. "Bridge report. The alien vessel just tried to scan us with an active beam," came the reply. "We deployed countermeasures." Zixtal's scales paled. "They're worried about us. Please allow us to communicate with our ship." Willis considered this request. "Under supervision." When allowed to send a message, Zixtal spoke quickly in the musical Zalarian language. The humans' translators picked up the words. "We are unharmed. The humans are not as we expected. Take no action that could be seen as hostile." After the message was sent, Dr. Clark approached the aliens with a medical scanner. "With your permission, I'd like to check your health. Our atmosphere might affect you differently over time." The Zalarians were surprised by this concern. Even as prisoners, the humans were offering medical care. "Your species is full of contradictions," Zixtal said to Willis. "You train for war, yet offer help to those who wronged you." Willis shrugged. "That's humanity for you. We hope for the best, but prepare for the worst," Porter finished. As night cycle gave way to day on the Intrepid, the Zalarians began to understand they had made more than a tactical error. They had fundamentally misunderstood the species they had come to study. These humans did not build warships because they wanted war. They built them because their history had never allowed them the luxury of assuming peace. And now, aboard the very vessel they had thought to study secretly, the Zalarians were about to get the education of their lives. The Zalarian researchers huddled together in the conference room, their scales shifting between worried blues and anxious yellows. 6 hours had passed since their capture. Commander Willis had left them under guard while she consulted with Earth Command about the diplomatic situation. "Our research was deeply flawed," Zixtal admitted quietly to his team. "The humans are nothing like our report suggested." Veldin nodded, her scales rippling with embarrassment. "We believed them primitive, because their technology is less advanced than ours. But their ship design shows a different kind of advancement." The door slid open and Security Chief Greg Porter entered with 2 guards. "The commander has made a decision," he announced. "You'll be confined to quarters while we travel to the nearest diplomatic station. But first, we need to be sure you pose no further threat." The aliens exchanged nervous glances. Porter continued. "We're implementing emergency protocols. For safety reasons, you'll be kept separate from each other." "Separate?" Nevlox's scales flashed alarm red. "But we are a research unit. We function together." Porter remained unmoved. "Not my problem. These are standard containment procedures for unknown entities." As the guards led them away, Zixtal realized the humans were following their training. In a crisis, they fell back on practiced routines. It was both impressive and frightening. Each researcher was placed in separate guest quarters with guards posted outside. The rooms were comfortable, but the doors were locked. Each contained a bed, a small desk, and a computer terminal with limited access. In her quarters, Commander Willis reviewed the situation report, The alien vessel remained at a distance, matching their course but taking no aggressive action. Analysis of the aliens' equipment confirmed they were indeed researchers, not spies or saboteurs. Still, protocols had to be followed. Willis touched her communicator. Willis to Dr. Clark. What's your assessment of our visitors? Fascinating. Species, came the doctor's voice. Their biology is remarkable. Their skin doesn't just change color, it actually adapts to environmental conditions. But they're showing signs of stress from separation. They appear to be a naturally social species. Willis considered this information. Keep monitoring them. Let me know if their health is at risk. In his quarters, Zixtal examined the computer terminal. It was restricted to basic information, ship schematics, crew protocols, and some historical data. He realized this was intentional. The humans were allowing him to learn about them, but nothing sensitive. What he found surprised him. The humans had detailed protocols for first contact situations, alien biology, and even cultural exchange. They had prepared for meeting new species long before they actually did so. Their planning was remarkable. Meanwhile, engineer Alan Reeves was still studying the Zalarian technology. Their teleportation device is incredible, he told his team. But it has a weakness. It can't function when certain electromagnetic frequencies are present. Like the ones our shields generate during combat? Asked his assistant. Alan nodded. Exactly. They probably didn't expect us to have those running during peacetime. On the bridge, Officer Ben Lopez detected unusual movement. Commander, the alien researchers left some kind of beacon in engineering. It's transmitting their location. Commander Willis frowned. Is it a threat? Doesn't appear to be. Just a tracking signal. Willis made a decision. Leave it active. Let their ship follow us. We want them where we can see them. In his isolation, junior researcher Nevlox was growing increasingly anxious. His scales had turned a deep, worried purple. Unlike the others, he wasn't handling the separation well. The humans had taken his communication device, but he had a backup. A small emergency beacon hidden in his environmental suit. Making a desperate decision, he activated it. The device was designed to trigger an emergency extraction, the Zalarian version of a rescue operation. Alarms blared throughout the Intrepid. Unknown energy signature detected in guest quarters section, reported the computer voice. Security. Teams rushed to Nevlox's room. The young researcher cowered as they burst in, weapons drawn. What did you do? Demanded Porter, grabbing the alien by his slender arm. Just called for help, Nevlox stammered. Standard procedure when researchers are in danger. Porter dragged him to the bridge where Commander Willis waited, her face grim. Your friend just sent an emergency signal to your ship, she told Zixtal, who had also been brought there. They're powering up engines and weapons. Zixtal's scales turned pale with horror. No, this is a mistake. Emergency extraction is for life-threatening situations only. Well, they seem to think you're in danger, Willis said coldly. My ship is now at risk because your researcher panicked. On the main screen, they could see the Zalarian vessel moving closer, its elegant form now glowing with energy. The humans responded with practiced efficiency. Shields raised, weapons charged, crew moving to battle stations. Stop this, Zixtal pleaded. Let me speak to them. Willis hesitated, then nodded. Make it quick. Using the ship's communication system, Zixtal sent an urgent message in Zalarian. The musical language flowed rapidly as he explained the situation. Tell them to stand down, Willis ordered when he finished. I have, Zixtal assured her, but our protocols are strict. They need confirmation that we are truly safe. Willis thought for a moment. Fine. All of you on screen together. Show them you're unharmed. The 6 researchers were brought together before the communication display. They showed their scales in calm colors and spoke reassuringly to their ship. Slowly, the Zalarian vessel powered down its weapons. The tension on the bridge eased slightly. That was too close, Willis said, turning to Zixtal. Your people nearly started an interstellar incident because you couldn't follow simple containment protocols. Zixtal lowered his head. We are not accustomed to being treated as threats. In the Galactic Concord, scientific vessels have special status. On Earth, Porter cut in. We learned the hard way that threats can come disguised as anything, even science. The aliens were returned to the conference room, now allowed to stay together under heavy guard. As they huddled, comparing notes on what they had learned, Zixtal came to a troubling realization. The humans aren't just physically adapted to deal with threats, he told his team quietly. Their entire society is structured around survival, in hostile conditions. They assume danger until proven otherwise. Veldin's scales shifted thoughtfully. Yet they showed restraint. They could have destroyed our ship. Because they're not just warriors, Zixtal replied. That's what makes them so remarkable. They balance constant vigilance with scientific curiosity and even compassion. Outside the room, Commander Willis was having a similar conversation with Dr. Clark. Their biology is fascinating, the doctor said. They evolved as prey species, not predators like us. They're naturally peaceful but highly intelligent. Willis nodded. Which explains their shock at our security measures. Their society never had to develop them. As the Intrepid continued toward the diplomatic station, both species were learning uncomfortable truths about each other. The humans discovered a galactic society that had evolved beyond constant military readiness. The Zilarians discovered a species whose history had never given them that luxury, and both wondered which approach would better serve them in the unknown future that lay ahead. The USS Intrepid arrived at Diplomatic Station Gamma 6 early the next morning. The station orbited a neutral planet on the edge of human space, serving as a meeting point between Earth forces and other species. Commander Willis had received new orders. Transfer the Zilarian researchers to the station and await representatives from the Galactic Concord. Will they punish us severely? Nevlox asked nervously as the 6 aliens prepared to disembark. His scales had taken on a worried gray color. Zixtal shook his head. We violated protocols, but our mission was approved by the Science Directorate. The consequences will fall on me as expedition leader. Security Chief Porter escorted them to the shuttle bay. The aliens noticed he seemed less tense now that they were leaving his ship. Some advice, he told them as they walked. Next time, you want to study someone, just ask. Most humans will talk your ear off if you let them. The Zilarians looked confused by the expression, their translator struggling with the idiom. Porter sighed. It means we talk a lot when asked. Before boarding the shuttle, Zixtal requested to speak with Commander Willis. She arrived moments later, her uniform crisp and her expression neutral. Commander, I wish to apologize formally for our intrusion, the alien researcher said. Our methods were disrespectful. Willis studied him for a moment. Apology accepted, but I'm curious. What did you learn about us during your stay? Zixtal's scales shifted to a thoughtful green. That we have misjudged humanity. The Concord sees your military vessels as signs of aggression. Now I see they are simply part of how your species navigates uncertainty. Willis nodded. When you've spent most of your history fighting each other, you don't drop your guard easily, even in peace. On the diplomatic station, the situation had escalated beyond what either the humans or the Zilarians expected. Representatives from 5 major Concord species had arrived, treating the incident as a serious diplomatic matter. Ambassador Jack Brown of Earth looked uncomfortable as he met with Willis in a private room. This is bigger than we thought, Commander. The Concord Council is treating this as a test case for human-galactic relations. We didn't do anything wrong, Willis protested. They boarded our ship illegally. True, Brown agreed, but how we handle it matters. The Zilarians are respected members of the Concord. Their science directorate is influential. In another room, Zixtal faced the Concord representatives. The Volaxian delegate, a floating crystalline being, pulsed with disapproval. Your actions have created a diplomatic incident with a volatile species. The Council requires a full explanation. Zixtal straightened to his full height. With respect, honored delegate, I believe our assessment of humanity has been flawed from the beginning. Explain, demanded the Eldurian representative, her 6 eyes blinking in sequence. We classified humans as primitive because their technology lags behind ours. We labeled them aggressive because they maintain military readiness. Both judgments were superficial, Zixtal said. He activated a display showing data gathered during their brief captivity. Their ship systems contain redundancies our designers would consider wasteful. Their crew trains constantly for scenarios that rarely occur. Their medical facilities can treat any species, not just their own. The representatives studied the information with varying expressions of surprise and skepticism. These are not signs of primitive thinking, Zixtal continued. They are adaptations to a history we cannot imagine. Humans prepare for the worst, while still hoping for the best. It is not aggression, it is survival. Later that day, the diplomatic talks began in earnest. The Zilarians were surprised when Commander Willis and her senior staff entered the conference room. They had expected only Ambassador Brown. We requested their presence, Brown explained to the Concord representatives. They experienced this incident firsthand. Their insights are valuable. The Valaxian delegate pulsed with reluctant agreement. Very well. Let us begin with the facts. Zilarian researchers illegally boarded a human military vessel. When discovered, the humans detained them according to their protocols, but provided medical care and safe transport to this station. Engineer Alan Reeves spoke up unexpectedly. With respect, there's something important missing from that summary. The delegates turned to him in surprise. Reeves continued, the Zilarians came to study us, but while they were aboard, we were studying them too. Their technology, their biology, their reactions. We learned as much about them as they did about us. Dr. Susan Clark nodded. I've already begun compiling a xenobiology report based on my observations. Their physiological responses to stress are fascinating. The Concord representatives seemed taken aback. They had expected the humans to demand punishment for the Zilarians. Instead, they were treating the incident as a scientific exchange. You're not angry about the intrusion? Asked the Eldurian, confused. Commander Willis smiled slightly. Oh, we were angry. Still are, to be honest. But we're also curious. That's the other thing you should understand about humans. We never waste a good learning opportunity. As the talks continued, a new understanding began to emerge. The Concord representatives saw firsthand how humans balanced military caution with scientific curiosity. The humans demonstrated that their readiness for conflict didn't mean they sought it out. During a break, Zixtal approached Willis and Dr. Clark. Your approach to this situation has been educational for all of us, he admitted. The council expected you to demand our punishment. Clark shrugged. What would that accomplish? We'd rather gain knowledge than satisfaction. The final agreement, reached after hours of negotiation, surprised everyone with its simplicity. The Zilarians formally apologized for the unauthorized boarding. The humans agreed to share their non-classified findings about Zilarian biology and technology. Most importantly, both sides committed to a proper cultural exchange program. As they prepared to return to their respective ships, Zixtal had one last conversation with Commander Willis. I came to study humans as interesting specimens, he said quietly. I leave respecting you as equals. Perhaps we are not so different after all. Willis looked thoughtful. Different journeys, similar destinations. You evolved past the need for constant vigilance. We're still working on that. And yet, your vigilance didn't lead to vengeance when you had cause, Zixtal observed. That reveals much about humanity's true nature. As the Intrepid broke orbit from the station, the crew gathered on the observation deck to watch the Zilarian vessel do the same. Its elegant form glowed softly as it turned toward home. Do you think they really understand us now? Asked Officer Ben Lopez. Commander Willis watched the alien ship disappear into lightspeed. They're beginning to, and that's a start. 3 months after the boarding incident, the USS Intrepid received new orders. They were to transport a special diplomatic team to the Zilarian homeworld, the first official human delegation invited to visit the planet. Commander Kate Willis read the message twice to be sure. Looks like our unwelcome visitors put in a good word for us, she told her senior staff during their morning briefing. Security Chief Greg Porter looked skeptical. Or they want a closer look at us in a controlled environment. Dr. Susan Clark smiled. Either way, it's progress. The Galactic Concord has been keeping humanity at arm's length for years. The journey to Zelaria took 2 weeks at maximum speed. During that time, the diplomatic team, led by Ambassador Jack Brown, worked closely with the Intrepid's crew to prepare. They studied Zelarian customs, practiced their formal greetings, and tried to learn the basics of the musical language. Engineer Alan Reeves had been specially requested to join the delegation. His encounter with the researchers had made him something of a celebrity among the Zelarians. "I still don't understand why they want me there," he told Willis as they approached the Zelarian system. "I'm just an engineer." "You were the first human they met," Willis replied. "And you didn't shoot them, which apparently exceeded their expectations." The Zelarian homeworld was beautiful, a blue-green planet with 2 small moons and rings like Saturn, but thinner and more colorful. As the Intrepid entered orbit, they were met by an escort of elegant ships that guided them to a docking station. The welcoming committee included all 6 of the researchers who had boarded the Intrepid. Chief Researcher Zixtal's scales were now a confident green as he greeted the human delegation. "Welcome to Zelaria," he said formally. "Your presence honors us." Ambassador Brown performed the traditional Zelarian greeting, a slow waving motion with both hands that the humans had practiced for days. "The honor is ours. Earth thanks you for this invitation." The humans were given a tour of the capital, city. They marveled at the Zelarian architecture, buildings that seemed to flow rather than stand, with colors that shifted throughout the day to match the changing light. "Your structures are beautiful," Alan told Zixtal as they walked. "No sharp edges anywhere." "We evolved in curved environments," the alien explained. "Right angles feel unnatural to us." The highlight of the visit was a special session of the Zelarian Science Directorate. The humans were surprised to learn they would not just be observers. They were invited to speak. "They want to hear about human engineering principles," Ambassador Brown told Alan. "Specifically about how we design for unexpected problems." Alan looked nervous. "I'm not a public speaker." "Just tell them how you approach your job," Willis encouraged him. "That's all they want to know." The Science Directorate chamber was filled with hundreds of Zelarians, their scales creating a rippling sea of colors. Alan stood before them, feeling small despite being taller than most of the aliens. "Human engineering isn't as elegant as yours," he began awkwardly. "We don't have your efficiency or your advanced materials. But we have something else: experience with things going wrong." The chamber was silent as he continued, warming to his topic. "Every system on our ships has a backup. Every backup has a backup. We can reroute power through alternative pathways, seal off damaged sections, and operate with partial systems." He explained how human ships were designed to function even when damaged, how crew members were trained to improvise repairs using whatever materials were available. "We call it Murphy's Law," he said. "If something can go wrong, it will go wrong. So we plan for that." The Zelarians seemed fascinated. One elder, her scales a wise blue-purple, asked, "Does this not create inefficiency, extra systems that may never be used?" "Absolutely," Alan agreed. "But we'd rather have them and not need them than need them and not have them." After the session, Zixtal showed the humans something unexpected, a new ship design inspired by their encounter with the Intrepid. It incorporated redundant systems and emergency protocols that were rare in Zelarian vessels. "Your approach has merit," Zixtal admitted. "The Science Directorate was skeptical until they saw our data. Now they're implementing some of your principles in our next generation of exploration vessels." Commander Willis studied the designs with interest. "And we've learned from you as well. Your power distribution system is far more efficient than ours. My engineers are still talking about it." That evening there was a formal reception. The humans were surprised to learn that they were not the only guests. Representatives from other Concord species were present, watching the human-Zelarian interaction with interest. Ambassador Brown found himself speaking with the Valaxian delegate, the same crystalline being who had been at the diplomatic station. "Zero. Concord has been observing how you handled this situation," the Valaxian said, its voice a ringing tone like crystal bells. "Most developing species would have responded with military force to such an intrusion." "We considered it," Brown admitted. "But what would that have achieved?" The Valaxian pulsed with what might have been approval. "This response suggests your species may be more ready for fuller Concord participation than previously assessed." As the reception continued, Dr. Clark engaged with several Zellerian medical researchers. They were particularly interested in human stress responses. "Your species faces danger head-on," one told her. "Most evolved prey species like us avoid conflict whenever possible. It's in our biology." Clark nodded. "Humans evolved as predators, but also as prey. We learned to fight when we had to, hide when we needed to, and work together to survive either way." On the final day of their visit, the humans were given unexpected news. The Galactic Concord had voted to upgrade Earth's status from observer to provisional member. It was the fastest status change in recent Concord history. As they prepared to depart, Commander Willis had one last conversation with Zixtal. "I never thanked you," the alien said quietly. Willis looked surprised. "For what? We detained your team and nearly fired on your ship." "For showing restraint when you had cause for aggression," Zixtal explained. "You taught us something valuable about humanity. You are prepared for war not because you desire it, but because your history has required it. Yet when faced with a threat, you chose measured response over retaliation." Willis smiled slightly. "Don't give us too much credit. We're still working on that balance." As the Intrepid broke orbit from Zelleria, the crew watched the beautiful ringed planet recede in the view screens. What had begun as an unauthorized boarding had somehow transformed into the beginning of a true cultural exchange. "Do you think they'll ever understand us completely?" Alan asked as he stood on the observation deck. Commander Willis watched the stars stretch into streaks as they entered faster-than-light travel. "Probably not. But they're trying, and so are we. In the end, that's what matters most." The Intrepid continued on its journey, carrying with it not just its crew but a new chapter in humanity's relationship with the wider galaxy. And somewhere, on Zelleria, 6 researchers were writing a report that would change how their entire species viewed the unusual, contradictory,